So, hello everybody, welcome to this session where I'm going to be talking about how to understand anxiety so that we can actually make shifts and experience more calm, more confidence and more healing. I'm going to talk about what helped me because I experienced anxiety before I had ME, CFS, fibromyalgia, and I experienced it whilst I had those conditions, and it did hinder my recovery. Okay, so I'd also like to know what you need help with. So pop a comment in the chat if you're watching live. If you're watching the replay, leave a comment or feel free to send me a message. Lynn saying can see and hear, thanks for letting me know. Okay, so what do you need help with? If I can, I will comment on it in this session, or if it's a bigger topic, I may do another video on that. So do let me know what it is you need help with around anxiety. For example, I often talk with clients who have anxiety around doing activities because they are concerned that doing those activities are going to make me worse. So we'll maybe touch on that. But I have made other videos on this topic, so do check them out. There are videos on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook channel, so have a look on my Facebook page or in my group. If you're in my group, do a search for anxiety, see what comes up. And in those other videos, I've talked about the factors that can influence our anxiety. So I won't go into them too much here, but it can be physical factors. For instance, if you're unwell, if your body's fighting some virus or infection, then that can put the body in a state of stress. If you have low blood sugar, if you're not eating enough, there might be environmental factors. Mold, might be people, might be chemical exposures that can again put your body in a state of stress. And then there can be psychological and emotional stress. Okay, and that's primarily I'm going to be talking about, what's going on here and how it's impacting our stress levels. So a couple of comments: anxiety around events and how to deal with anxiety when I'm around others, like going outside at times. Okay, so maybe if you can tell me a little bit more about that, maybe we'll come back to that later. All right. So, and I talk about the fact there's three types of anxiety. There's the kind of phobias. There's situational anxiety. So the comments in the in the chat right now are about the situational situations where the anxiety is triggered. And then there's non-specific anxiety where we just feel some anxiety in our body, but we can't pinpoint it. Now, sometimes, not always, that might be related to trauma, feelings of not feeling safe. Okay, and that's a whole area I'll touch on very briefly, but it is a bigger topic, and it's something when I work with clients who do my Building Resilience program, that's something we work on in more depth. So let's think about why it's important to understand anxiety. Well, if we don't, then it can be getting in the way of recovery, because as you probably understand, when we're in a state of stress, anxiety, that stops the body from doing the important healing work, stops our digestive system working properly, hinders our sleep, the quality of our sleep, it hinders our energy production and storage, it affects our thinking, so we're less in clever thinking mode, and so it's more difficult to problem solve, etc. Okay, so there's quite a number of significant effects. Mistakes people make is, number one, believing they can't shift it. And certainly that's something at one point I kind of felt anxiety, but I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now the problem is I just didn't have the right tools. Okay, even though I was trained as a counsellor, even though I'd done lots of stress management training, I did not have the tools that I needed to address the anxiety. Okay. The second mistake people make is that they escalate their anxiety without realizing it. It's an unconscious pattern. I'll talk a bit more about that. And then that can result in you kind of feeling like this anxiety is just very mysterious, can't really make sense of what's happening. I remember years ago chatting to someone who had panic attacks. And at the time I thought, I don't really know, even as a counsellor, how to help them make change in a quick, significant way. And it's only later on when I learned some tools and skills that I understood better how that person was generating anxiety and what could help them. We'll talk a bit about that in this session. There are some opportunities here. We can learn to shift it, and we do just need the right tools and strategies. Okay, so let's talk about what we need to understand. Okay, so first thing I want to share, the big idea is that our brain is trying to keep us safe. Okay, the brain doesn't perceive the difference between real and imagined threats. The mind does, but the brain doesn't. Okay, so you might know, for instance, when I used to do free talks, I'd do this exercise where I got people to close their eyes and imagine they were on a roller coaster ride, or that they were standing near the edge of a cliff. And some people would tense up. You could see the tension in their face. And even though it was in their imagination, their body and their brain were responding as if it was real. The other thing is that the brain can make mistakes. Okay, so an example of that is, I remember being on holiday with a friend in Wales, and he was telling me that his brother, who was in the army, was doing active service in Northern Ireland, and they were walking down a country lane in Wales, and a car backfired, and my friend looked around and his brother wasn't there, and his brother had dived behind a hedge because his instinctual response was that sound was the sound of, his brain thought it was gunfire. Okay, so that's just an example of that, but you probably have your own examples of when you experience something as a threat that actually isn't a threat. Okay, we need to understand neuroplasticity. That is the ability of the brain to grow with use. So the bottom line is, whatever we practice, we get good at. Okay, so there may be things that you're really good at that are useful things. Pop in the chat something that you're good at that is a useful thing. You know, it might be playing an instrument, doing art, doing dance or whatever. So just let me know, what is something that you're really good at that's a useful thing to be good at. Now, the problem is we can actually get really good at things that are not very useful. So I was really good at generating anxiety. I've learned to be much more rubbish at it now. Okay, and neurons, this is the kind of wiring in the brain that sends signals and kind of makes sense of what's going on. They compete for space. So for instance, if I'm practicing learning the drums, which I have been doing over the last few years, then as I practice, part of the brain is going to grow, and that's the part that corresponds to learning the drums. But if I stop playing the drums and just practice anxiety and worrying and catastrophizing, then I get better at that. The wiring in the brain gets stronger, takes up more space. The bit that knows about drumming might shrink if I'm not practicing drumming, and the worrying and the anxiety wiring will take over. Okay, so that's why it's really important to understand that, you know, that the brain grows with use and neurons compete for space. Whatever we practice, we get good at. And the really interesting thing is, if we practice something enough, it becomes automatic. Okay, so it becomes an unconscious pattern. So if I'm learning, so Lynn says art, playing the recorder's piano. So if Lynn was learning, when she was learning the chord of C, initially she had to think about where she put her fingers. Okay. After a while, she didn't have to think about it. It just happened automatically. Okay. Lynn says, my keroses, when I'm doing art, I'm more positive in my thinking. Fantastic. Okay. So these patterns become automatic. You don't have to think about where to put the fingers for the chord of C, because that's taking up brain power. So the brain says, oh, actually, we know how to do this. We'll just make this automatic. Okay. Middle C on the piano, exactly. All right. And this also applies to those unhelpful things. So for instance, if someone has I remember working with a client who had social phobia, the moment she was suddenly in a social situation, she would start to feel anxious and panicky. All right. And actually I can remember a time about 20 years ago being in a veg shop, greengrocers, and someone I knew came in, and I just felt very anxious. And I have no idea why I felt anxious. She's a really nice person, but I just felt very self-conscious, and I could feel my muscles tensing up, and that was an automatic habitual pattern at the time. Okay, something that does not happen in the same way as it did. It doesn't happen often. Okay, so the brain starts to associate things. So for instance, if you think of someone you really like hanging out with, if you close your eyes and thinking about them, you probably start to feel good, put a smile on your face. Conversely, if you think about someone who you find really challenging, what happens? Okay, it starts to affect your physiology. I'm thinking of someone right now who's annoying me at the moment. It's my neighbour who's being noisy. And it's easy for me to generate some annoyance, okay? And I have to just watch myself and not get too much into that. Now, this is important to understand that the brain automates our responses and they become unconscious, okay? Because sometimes the things that trigger us, we might be aware of, okay? But sometimes we're not aware of the things that are triggering us, okay? So an example of that, this is the power of the unconscious mind. A while back, I was in Pret-a-Manger having a salad, and I suddenly started thinking about the time I worked at a summer camp back in the 90s. 80s. I'm quite old. And I thought, why am I thinking about working at summer camp? And then I realised it was because the salad dressing was very similar to the salad dressing that we had on this summer camp. Okay? And I was amazed that my unconscious mind made that connection before I did consciously. Okay? So that's just an example. So the point is, things can trigger us and we might not even be aware of what is triggering us. Okay? So I mentioned earlier that we can escalate anxiety. So how do we do that? Well, there is a formula, okay? Or a recipe, if you like. When I'm working with clients, I talk about this equation, E plus R equals O, where E is the event, R is the response, and O is the outcome. So let's say the event is a sensation, okay? A sensation in our body. It might be an emotion, it might be a physical sensation. Let's say we're experiencing a physical sensation, we'll call it a symptom for now, so you understand what I'm talking about. And what can happen is, rather than just experiencing that sensation, okay, I'm noticing a particular sensation in my body. What many of us tend to do is we go to our mind and we create a thought. And that thought is unhelpful. Oh no, I've got this sensation. Here we go again. How long am I going to have this? Am I ever going to get well? All this kind of thinking, which then results in anxiety. Now, if we're experiencing anxiety, that is going to affect the sensations we experience in our body. So therefore, those sensations can escalate. Just to look at it in another way, imagine this is kind of adrenaline in our body and this is time. Now, if at point A they say, oh no, I'm feeling anxious, what is going to happen? They're going to escalate their anxiety and they're going to get to point B. And if at point B they say, oh no, I'm feeling even more anxious now, my palms are sweating, my heart is beating even faster, then they're going to get to point C. And again, if they do the same response, they're going to get to point D and have a kind of full-blown panic attack. That is something I've experienced, and at the time I didn't understand how I was escalating my anxiety. Pop yes in the chat if that's something you can relate to. Okay, that perhaps you didn't realise that by noticing the sensations and then experiencing anxiety, having those anxious thoughts, oh no, this is getting worse, you created more anxiety. Okay, let me know in the chat, is that something you can relate to? That gives us a clue to what the solution is. What we need to understand is that responding in that way, okay, Penny's saying can relate. In responding that way, we're actually resisting the sensations that we're experiencing. Okay, so we're experiencing sensation in the body, okay, and we're resisting it. And when we resist, according to Byron Katie, we lose, but only 100% of the time. And according to the Buddhists say that pain plus resistance equals suffering. Okay? So again, that gives us a clue to what the solutions are. So let's talk a little bit about solutions. Penny says, what you resist persists. Exactly. That's exactly right. So let's talk a little bit about some solutions. Okay. First thing we need to understand is we need to kind of understand how to do a different recipe. Okay. Instead of doing the recipe for anxiety, the recipe for calm and confidence. Okay. We need to utilize the resources that you have. Okay, you have inner resources. All right. Someone says, my partner has a lot of anxiety and it creates anxiety with issues that normally don't bother me. Okay, so you're saying that it, affects you as well. Is that what you're saying? Just want to clarify that. Okay, so we need to learn to utilize your resources. Okay, you have the ability to change your focus. Okay, you can make the decision to change what you focus on. You've got the ability to use your breath to focus on your breathing. Maybe let's just do that for a moment right now. I invite you to close your eyes. Obviously, only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. You might choose to put your hand on your heart and a hand on your belly, or both hands on your heart, or just have your hands in your lap or by your side, whatever's comfortable. And I invite you just for a moment to focus on your breath. As you breathe in, just know you're taking in oxygen, which is going to nourish your blood and your cells. If it's comfortable, breathe in through your nose into your belly and out through your nose, if that's comfortable. Ensure that you're breathing just slowly and gently and quietly, because that's how we naturally breathe when we are relaxed. And as you breathe in and out, just ensure your out breath is a little bit longer than your in breath. As you breathe in, just breathe in the goodness. As you breathe out, just allow your mind and body to relax, soften, and let go. I invite you just to practice doing that just for 1 minute, whenever you need. And just notice what difference that makes over time. Okay, so you can bring yourself back now. Let me know in the comments, what was that like? We literally did that for maybe 2 minutes. How did that feel just to do that? I've done a simple relaxation with a client or clients who've told me that they can't relax. And within a minute, the vast majority said, I feel more relaxed. Doris says, great. Thanks for letting me know. All right. So we can use our breath. I was listening to the audiobook of Your Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And he says that in schools they teach children to blow bubbles as a way of calming themselves. Because when you blow bubbles, you have to breathe out slowly and gently. What a fantastic idea, hey? So if you like, you could go and get yourself a little bottle of bubbles, and when you need to, just take a breath, slowly blow, and see those beautiful, amazing bubbles. So Penny says calming, grounding, Lynn, restful and relaxing. Wow, indeed. What an amazing idea, okay? So that's how easy it is. I always remember when I was in junior school, I was in the Nativity play, playing Joseph, and I was a bit anxious. And the teacher just said, what you need to do is focus on your breath. Just focus on breathing in, breathing out. And I practiced that. And I nailed it. All right. So, it was I was only about 10 at the time, but it was a useful insight into what can help calm my mind. All right. We can use our body. Okay. So really simple technique. You can do this if it feels comfortable. If it's not comfortable, then don't do it. But literally, really simple thing. I think my ex-boss Phil Parker taught me this. You hold your hands like this. You bring them down. You kind of bring them up like this. And just bring them back. If you're able, try that for a moment. If you're not, then that's fine. But just feel how that feels. Just focus. Might want to close your eyes if it's comfortable and safe to do so. And just focus on the movement of your hands. Again, how does that feel to do that? Often when I get clients to do that, they say actually that's relaxing. The vast majority. Some people don't resonate with it, and that's fine. You can find the thing that resonates, all right? Penny says fabulous. Now I did do a separate video where I talked about strategies for kind of feeling safe in your body, so check that out. Penny says love it. Yeah, it's very good exercise, okay? So next thing, you can use your mind. You can use your capacity for supervision. Okay, what I mean by that is that you can become aware. Okay, you can become aware of the patterns. So for instance, you might say, oh yeah, I notice when I have a sensation, it might be I'm feeling bored or upset or frustrated. I have a reactive thought. I feel a feeling, and there might be a behavior. All right. So for example, my go-to strategy if I felt frustrated or upset or annoyed is I'd go for distraction. And actually what I've really been practicing is, okay, I'm noticing this sensation in my body. Let's just sit with it. Or maybe let's just do a little simple relaxation. Some of you may be aware of the flip the switch technique. I have a number of relaxation strategies, free resources. So if you'd like one of them, just pop a message in the chat. Free resources. Tag me if you're watching the replay, because I don't always see the notifications. Or send me a message and I'll share the link to some free relaxation resources. Okay. We can use our mind to change our mindset, to reframe the way we look at things, okay? So, for example, I did a coaching course last year, and the guy who ran the course, a chap called Brian Johnson, I can't remember where he got this from, but he said that whenever he noticed some sensation in his body, feeling of anxiety or nervousness, he would say, "I'm excited." Okay? And that was kind of reframed. I think there was some research that showed that when people felt a bit nervous about doing a presentation, one group focused on calming strategies, and the other group just focused on saying to themselves, "I'm excited, I'm stimulated." And actually, which group do you think performed better out of those two groups? A, the calming strategies, or B, I'm excited? Pop your answer in the chat. Lynn says, "Brilliant, this is great, thank you." You are welcome, Lynn. What do you think, A or B? Penny says B. What do other people think? I know there's a few people on here watching, so don't be shy, have a guess. Okay, I'll give you the answer. It was B. Penny was right. I'm excited group, exactly. So we can use mind-based practice like meditation. I tell the story of a hypnotherapist called Stephen Brooks. Some of you may have heard this story, but I love this story. He was a hypnotherapist, gave up his practice, very successful practice, went to live in Thailand in a Buddhist monastery. And he said, I'd sit down in my cabin to meditate, and there'd be a knock on the door. So I'd go and answer the door, and I'd have a chat with the person. They'd send them on their way, and I'd go back to the meditation. And then there'd be another knock on the door. This time I'd say, "Go away, I'm meditating." And eventually they'd go away. Carried on meditating. And then there's another knock on the door. And this time he just noticed that there was a knock on the door and continued with his meditation. The point of the story is that he says those knocks on the door are our thoughts. We can either get into a conversation with them. "Oh, I'm feeling anxious. Why am I feeling anxious? I don't like this anxiety." We can fight it. "I don't want to feel anxious. Go away, anxiety." Try, "I must relax, I must relax." Or we can just notice, "Oh, I'm noticing there's anxiety in my body. Let's pop that thought on a cloud and let it float off. And I'll just go back to the practice of being aware of my in-breath and my out-breath." So that's something we can practice, we can cultivate, and we can get good at that. So I've shared a few strategies for you. I hope that gives you some food for thought and gives you some things you can go away and apply. As I say, I'm really happy to share some free resources with you, so get in touch if you'd like some of those. If you would like to take things further, then I have created the Calm course, and this is an online course. It's kind of 6-week program. We did it last year and I recorded it, and it's available now, and I've made it so it is affordable. People can spread payments, comes with a guarantee. You can try it out. If you don't get any value after 2 weeks, you get a full refund. Okay, this is someone who did the Calm course. They said, "I haven't had a full panic attack since doing the course." This was a year ago. She only sent me this email, I think, back in November. I would give the course 5 stars for the very simple reason that it worked. So if you'd like to know about the Calm course, get in touch or pop the word Calm in the chat, and I will send you the link. You can have a look and see if it's for you. But for now, as ever, if you've got any questions, get in touch. If you like some of those free resources, pop the word free in the chat. If you like this video, do share. If you're watching on Facebook, do join my Facebook group, ME CFS Explored. If you're watching on YouTube, do subscribe, leave a comment, and you'll be notified of more content. So wishing you great health. You are welcome, you're welcome. Keep up the great work. Keep working on yourself. Keep adopting a growth mindset. Keep working on the things that you can influence and let go of the things that you can't influence. Wishing you great health. Thanks and bye for now. You are welcome, Doris. Bye all.